In today's video, we are going to be installing an interior door. This is the door, and this is the spot. It's a pretty straightforward video. I'm going to try and do it in real time so you can gauge how long it should take. But with that being said, there are a few variables that could add time to the installation drastically. First things first, let's jump right into it. Measure up your door. If you're doing the framing, typically you want to make your opening, or RO, rough opening, 2 inches bigger than the door size itself. But it's always good to clarify before you get too far ahead of yourself. But we'll get a rough estimate here, 29.5 inches. And bringing it over here, I have 31.5. So the width is good. Let's check the height. This is a bit of an abnormal opening. As you can see here, there's no header, so we're gonna max out the height of the door. Our door opening is 79 inches, and our door height overall is 80 inches. So we are gonna have to trim this down. Now, before we go ahead and trim down the door, we have to see if the floor is level. To do this, you just grab a level, put it on the floor. Ideally, a 2-foot level is a bit nicer. And in this case, the floor is out quite a bit. So I've grabbed a shim, and I'm just gonna shim it up to the proper height. You wanna reference this point and this point, because that's where your door frame is gonna sit on. The middle doesn't matter as much. This is level here. I'll show you how big of a difference it is. All right, I found the height, which is this thickness here, the difference between the high point and the low point. So then what I do is I measure what this is. In this case, it's 3/8 of an inch. So I'll cut this frame of the door 3/8 longer because this is my high point. You'll have noticed when I cut it, I almost did cut into the door itself, the slab. So we might actually have to cut a 1/2 inch off that bottom of the door. But let's dry fit it first. It does fit, but it is quite snug. I'll give you a closer look. So you'll see that the frame is tight, and the door itself is actually tight too. Up here it's tight as well, which typically wouldn't be ideal, but given the scenario of how this door is gonna finish, I'm just gonna run my trim up the side here and butt it into there, and this joint here will caulk. So I'll take it out again and we'll cut down the slab, the door itself. And although the door could have swung open, it would have been so tight, and you want a bit of a gap under your door for proper airflow. Otherwise it messes with the circulation of your house. Creates a ballooning effect, I think they refer to it as, where the room itself is pressurized and doesn't see the proper air circulation. So you do want at least 1/2 inch gap, I would say. I'm gonna cut this and we'll roll the tape again. I just thought I would share, I've gone ahead and cut the door, but one thing to mention is if you have to cut too much of the door out, you'll go into the hollowness of the door, providing that you're using a hollow interior door, which most of them are. In this case, I didn't. There's still that solid piece in there, but I think another 1/2 inch I probably would have gotten into that hollow core. What you would do then, you would just take the off piece you cut, this piece, you would remove this 1/8 inch MDF skin and then just reinsert this core back into the door. Hold it in with some glue, maybe some nails depending. But yeah, now that that's done, one more thing we have to do with this edge here. It's sharp, so if you go and paint it, there's just a chance that that sharp edge can chip off. I just like hitting it with this piece of sandpaper. Typically it doesn't take much. You just want to round that edge over. We will have to paint this bottom edge as well as the top edge, but that won't be in this video. We're just gonna install the door. And now we can go ahead and begin the actual installation. There's a couple ways that you can do this next step. Some people put the door in first, level it up. Some people use a laser, some people use a level, some people just use the reveal of the door itself. I've done all those methods, and for me, what I find that has worked best and most consistent is the process I'm going to show you. So I'm going to base everything off of the hinge side of the door. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my level on here. This is specifically I think they call it a jamb level. So it is meant to fit on the inside of a door from top hinge to bottom hinge, which are the most important for the installation. This is a 3-hinge door, but I throw my level on here, see if this is plumb. And you can see that it's not. It's quite a bit out actually. So the bottom has to be kicked out that much, which is quite a bit. So what I do here is I find where plumb is, and then I measure this gap. In this case, it looks like it's almost 3/8. You'll see here I have a couple selection for shims and spacers. I have some 3/4, some 1/2 inch. Let's throw a 1/2 inch in there and see if that brings us to level. Okay, that brings us bang on actually. So what I'm doing with this process is I'm leveling my shims, not the door jamb, and I'm only gonna level the top, plumb the top and the bottom one where the top and bottom hinge are gonna be. I'm not gonna put the door in there and try and shim the door jamb straight. I've found that this method is better, in my opinion. Okay, so it's a 1/2 inch shim, but I want to make sure there's shim at the top too. I don't want to go directly onto the framing, so I'm gonna do more than that 1/2 inch and do a 3/4 inch shim, and then the top will probably need about 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, you can see here now I do have to come out a little bit, which is preferred. If you go onto the framing, there's just more of a chance that that framing twists and messes up your door down the road. Okay, I got my nailer. I am using a 16 gauge. More of the traditional finish nailer is a 18 gauge. I find the holding power of those isn't as good. So for something like this, especially doors, I'll either use screws, finishing screws, or the 16 gauge. Now that I have that block down there, I can plumb off of that. So as I plumb up, I'm gonna use shims, and shims are tapered from a thicker point to a more narrow point. And because of that, you wanna go thin to thin and push them together. Otherwise, the shim will be twisted, or the shim will be slanted in one direction. And because of that, you'll have a twisted door frame. I'm just gonna slowly work my way up. Just take your time with this process because it's the most important part. Okay, that's bang on. Man, the exposure and everything on my camera lens is bonkers. Now that I have the top and bottom shim or spacers on, I'm gonna go ahead and put one in the middle. I do the top and bottom first because now I know the exact measurement for that middle shim. and it's gonna be that 1/2 inch spacer I have. That worked out well. And now I just have to put it in the door. Hello. Because I have to open the door to install it properly, it's leaning one way, so to fix that, I open up the door fully, and I'll just throw a shim down here. And as I do that, I can plumb up the door jamb itself, because you want this side of the door to be plumb as well. We know that this way is plumb, now it's just in and out. Okay, it's almost there. You can actually see here that the drywall is sticking out a bit, and that's a good indication it's not quite plumb, typically. So, rather than struggle, you just shim it up slowly. I'm gonna shim it up that 1/8 of an inch, and we'll check over here again. Okay, this is much better. You can even throw a speed square on it and check. It's almost perfect. Check down here as well. Now, it is important to say you should make sure your door is installed correctly. If the drywall is out, your trimmer, the drywall person should fix that. It's more important your door is installed correctly because it's a working mechanism, so it has to be able to function properly. Okay, we are bang on level there. Plumb, I mean plumb. Are we? Yeah, you can see there, bang on plumb. Just out of interest, I'm gonna see if it's good with the drywall. I framed these walls and drywalled it, so it should be. The next step is I'm just gonna put one nail into my top, mostly to hold the door. And because it's only a nail, you can manipulate a little bit after the fact. Now you can see that it's tight against this shim, and it is tight against this shim. So those two nails will hold it now as I swing the door closed, and this is the next stage. Is you just kind of want to verify everything's good before you make it absolute. It is looking pretty good. You'll notice that I did a mud patch here. I just finished mudding this room and I forgot that I had it there, and it's wet and it just peeled it back, so that's gonna make a mess. And also, I'm not a huge fan of this gap. It's quite big, but we're kind of forced to go as tight as we can to this side because we need to fit a vanity in here. So it's not ideal, but as long as my trim will cover that gap, it won't be a problem. Yeah, it's 2 inches, so my trim is 3 inches. I'll confirm that, but it should be fine. Now, the one thing I'll do before I completely fasten this is make sure that this reveal is consistent. That's a pretty good telltale sign that everything's just as it should be. Give you a peek. So you want this gap to be consistent. It's looking good, it's looking good. And typically the issue is right down here. It's tight. And normally I actually put a screw through there because that's what provides the most compression strength to close or to open up this reveal. I'm gonna opt to use finishing screws to secure it, only because I have them. So I'm gonna do one at each hinge. Wrong bit. Never mind, apparently I don't have the bit at all, so we are gonna use a framing screw. Just in this, you know what, I might put one up there too. That did something. You can see there's a gap now. So the screw in the bottom is in, it's pulled it where it needs to go. I'm gonna throw one more screw up top and then I'll just nail everything else. So as soon as you have the hinge side fastened securely, everything else is a lot more straightforward. All I have to do now is I'll close the door. I'll make sure the door is flush with the jamb, and then I'll also make sure that it's somewhat flush with the drywall, and that will indicate that it's plumb. It's right where I want it to be, and now I just have to cut shims for this gap, which is basically a 2x4. Literally is a 2x4. So I'll grab some shims and we'll come back and finish this off. Because it is a 2x4, I'm actually gonna try and screw it into position. Completely wrecked my mudding job. And now starting with the top, I just follow it down. So I'll shim this and secure it. First making sure that the door closes. It's where I want it to be. Okay. And now I just work my way down. In terms of how many shims to put, it varies. Ideally you put one here, you put one here because the latch is going to see the most force put against it, and one or two at the bottom. Depending on what casing you do, your casing can also hold your jamb quite well. I'm probably going to do one in the middle, one at the handle, one at the bottom. So I'll take this measurement. Surprise, surprise, it's another 2x4. That's crazy. Now let's stick it in somewhere here maybe. I'm just gonna double check as I close the door. That's pretty good. I'm actually gonna manipulate a little bit with that shim, but first I'll fasten it. Yeah, so I'm gonna manipulate it a little bit with this shim. Something like that. Perfect. And then moving downwards, I'm gonna do one at the handle. Instead of a 2x4, I'm gonna use two 3/4 inch pieces of plywood that I have. Sometimes what I do for the latch side, more so if it's a heavier door, but I'll do it in this case too because it's easier for me to get a screw in it. I'll take the strike plate off the jamb and I'll put a screw behind there. Put a shim there. You tell me if it looks good. Perfect. And then one down here will do it. I'm gonna throw a screw into here as well. If you're screwing too close to the edge, you want to make sure you pre-drill because it will split your wood. And that's how I do a door. So pretty simple process. It closes, you just do the hinge side, make those shims plumb, and you're not fighting with having to plumb the door itself. Fasten it, and then everything else you can either do by reveal, this reveal here, or you could plumb it up, but the reveal is a safer bet. Cut off your shim so no one pokes themselves in the eye. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.